guys, this is Preparedness Talk. My special guest today is Angry Prepper, and we're going to talk about some things, and we're going to talk about current events, the issues that are going on right now in 2024. There's a lot to talk about. How you doing, man?
Good, man. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah,
Sorry that I had no clue who you were until you started talking on that. And to be fair, I when we were talking on Instagram, I didn't even think to look at your what you call it. And I just trusted that.
yeah,
And then I looked at it, and you got a really good Instagram page.
I
That
appreciate it.
it's way better than mine. And I looked at your channel. I'm like, I like the setup. I like what you're talking about on your channel. It's pretty good, man.
I
Again,
appreciate it,
a,
man.
a lot of
Yeah,
shit's a lot better than mine because I approach this from an angle of I don't give a shit. Like as
yeah,
long as people get the message, everything
right.
else is just.
No,
But
for
yeah,
sure.
but
Like I said
you
before,
go ahead.
yeah, I've been looking at your videos and watching your videos. Right before I got into the army. I would say probably the majority of your videos is why I started a YouTube channel because I was like, if he can talk trash and speak his mind about current events, so I was like, I probably won't be as bad, uh, but I can do it my way. But yeah, I mean, your videos have been inspiring, for the process of my work here on YouTube and or Instagram and the stuff that I do in preparedness, and just getting people informed and talking about the issues because these are things that need to be talked about
Yeah.
in the daily life of people's world. So because I think preparedness is still something that people gravitate away from as a crazy doomsday prepper type deal, and it's really not. You can have the average person start from scratch, start from basics, and learn something. The current times right now, we're in 2024. We know it's election season. What are the, I would say, top three things that you're preparing for and or organizing, to really get yourself ready for the next couple months? Because it's upon us.
So been doing this for a while, and I'm pretty much squared away in like the food department. Water, not so much, right? Because I live in the city. We don't
Right.
have a house or a home. We can't store these 50-gallon drums. I mean, I could now, being where I moved, I could put them out on my terrace and do a rain catchment system, which I'm thinking about doing.
Okay.
But outside of that, I think everything is squared away for the most part. When you're preparing for everything, right, and you're not just focused on one thing, which a lot of people do, which is fine. If you're focused on one thing that's going to start your preparedness journey, that's okay. But the
Yeah.
older you get in the game, the more you start looking at it just being, oh man, I noticed that I was prepared for hurricanes, tornadoes, blackouts, whatever it is. So when people prepare, it should be an umbrella of being prepared for everything that's within your power to prepare for, right? Obviously, everything outside of your power would be like a meteor smashing into a planet, the earth,
Right.
uh, ground shifting and breaking apart. That's outside of our power.
Yeah.
But things like civil unrest because of the election, or I don't know, the possible martial law because somebody being taken out during that election, things like that are within our powers to prepare for, right?
Right.
If they happen to have a blackout because somebody is winning that election, again, that's something we can adjust to. Every emergency that happens, we're able to adjust to it as long as you're prepared for it, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you're not prepared for it, you can't adjust to it, and then you wind up being asked out.
Yeah. No, that's really true. I mean, just taking that first step to prepare and get your mindset ready for a blackout or an event that disrupts society or your natural way of life. I think that's important for a lot of people to at least have the know or the know-how to do basic things. Uh, you mentioned, you know, how there may be a disruption, maybe uh, depending on which way this presidency turns. Like if they decide, okay, one side decides, hey, we don't believe what's going on with these votes, um, and we're just not going to, you know, give it up. And or the other side's like, well, we don't believe in the votes that were counted, so we got to do a recount. Do you think some of that's going to kind of take effect this year?
So the Biden party or side is definitely going to lose. And when they lose, there's definitely going to be some outcry. Now, the craziness about it is a lot of Democrats, even those that hate Trump, realize that Biden cannot win.
Right.
In the polls right now, Trump is winning,
Right.
but they're already starting his slide in votes, which is impossible, being that we watched the current president talk on stage on national TV and embarrass the entire Democratic Party. Actually, he embarrassed the entire country.
Yeah. Yeah.
That being said, something unfortunately might happen, and I think there might be some kind of taking of the election from the guy who's going to win, because there is no other way. Look what happened in France,
Right.
right? So France just yesterday or 2 days ago, the right-wing party, if you will, just lost and slid into third place. Their
Mm-hmm.
first round, they were in first place and blew out the other two parties, blew them out of the waters. So the left started rioting, started behaving like children. And then the second round comes around, and all of a sudden they went from first place to last.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of people are saying that they used a dirty trick to cheat at this election. And that was a huge gap in between the right and their left party winning. Huge gap. But somehow they did some cheating maneuver that I still can't even comprehend that allowed them to win.
Hmm.
The left is desperate, but they also understand that cheating might not be an option because there's too far of a gap. Though the media is trying to make us believe that Trump is sliding down, that's a virtual impossibility. And when you have Democrats now stating that they're voting for Trump because they felt left out of the loop, the black votes in America and Spanish votes in America who were Democrats are outwardly saying in videos and interviews that they're voting for Trump. You had a bunch of Jewish women, don't know why they pointed that out, but whatever, that they're voting for Trump because the Biden administration abandoned them during this whole October 7th Israeli Palestinian thing. So you have
Right.
all of these people, including movie stars, actively moving over and voting for Trump. For them to cheat, I think would start civil war, in my opinion.
Right. And the
At least
media's
I would hope
not
so.
helping. Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
not at all.
And you know, if because the majority of people watch the news, they listen to the media, and they don't take account that these people are paid off. These people have agendas, you know, especially, you know, the ABCs of the news networks. Unless you're getting your news from an actual outside source or international source. Uh, do you think there may be some international interruptions in this voting season?
So they already started with Putin and Trump, and Putin just planted the seed of doubt, if you will, in
Mm-hmm.
people by stating that if Trump wins, he will sit at the table and talk about ending the Ukraine war.
Yeah, I saw that.
When you plant that, and again, he's KGB, or used to be KGB, KGB opposition, and he was good at psych ops, if I'm not mistaken. So, of
Mm-hmm.
course, he makes that statement, and now people are going to turn around and go, you see, I mean, Biden, sorry, Putin is talking about ending the Ukraine war if Trump wins. There has to be some kind of collusion there because why else would he say that? Right.
Right.
So I think Putin's already starting his nonsense. And
Mm.
that's about as far outside as it would get. I don't think the Chinese are going to play a role in it. I think they're sitting back to watch what happens. Russia's going to start their shit. They also have the FBI, I noticed for the first time, has put up wanted signs, I think, for two Russian hackers that they think are going to play a role in this election. Now, whether that's
Mm.
for Biden or Trump remains to be seen. but I think there's going to be some outside interference. I just don't know how bad it's going to get.
Right. Yeah, I mean, again, that they accused Trump's camp of outside interference last time. So I wouldn't be surprised, if that's the same story if they don't get their way. I mean, if they get their way, what are they going to say? Interference wasn't there, or
Right.
are they going to play ball? You know?
Either way, they're going to cry about something. They always got something to cry about. And
Right.
the craziness about it is, and I was talking to one guy. He just unfriended me on Facebook today because because he's stupid, right? And so I called him stupid just so that because I don't like to unfriend people because I'm not that petty, but I am petty
Right.
enough to admit when I start doing dumb shit like that on YouTube. I mean on
Right.
Facebook. And he made a statement about Trump and Project 2025. And I go,
Oh yeah, that thing.
so here's the problem. Here's the issue with 2025. I read some of it, and I read the main point of each chapter, right? So when you click on a PDF file, you can go to each chapter. As it stands right now, it's for rebuilding America.
Mm.
The liberals and the left are pushing it as a demise of America. But when you look at what they're pointing out and what they're pushing and what they're trying to do, as far as giving the country back to the people and less governing from the government. And that's the
Right.
whole basis of it. All right. So now the left is sitting there talking about how they want to put church back in school. I do agree with that to a point. Do I think we should force it upon kids? Absolutely not. But we should definitely introduce church back in the schools because when church was taken out of schools, the disrespect to kids went up for
Mm.
everyone. And it's not even like I'm not making this up. It's a fact that you look at over a 30-year period, I think it was, or 40-year period. They started looking at it being taken out of schools and how to disrespect the kids and things like teachers crossing the line with their students. It's
Right.
astronomically high, right?
Yep.
Am I saying that God's going to save school? No, but I think there's a respect level there with religion.
Yeah. I
So
mean, we've seen that, in these past couple of years, taking God out of the school and even the attack on men and fathers in these kids' lives. The,
exactly.
the attack on men has been outrageous, at least in my eyes.
All right.
This
No,
toxic masculinity thing. It-
and they make all of that up, the toxic masculinity and everything else. So again, when you and I tell people read it for yourself, and it's 922 pages long, so you don't have to read all of it, but you can read each chapter, the first paragraph or two paragraphs. You read it, and they talk about, and it's a rebuilding roadmap for Democrats or Republicans or anybody else who goes into office. It's not
mm,
for Republicans. It's not right leaning. It's for anyone who wants to. And obviously, you can pick and choose what you want to do. You don't have to
mhm.
follow the entire thing to a T. But that's what
Right.
they were stating in the beginning of the PDF. The problem is when people don't read and you take the word of somebody else. And when I started noticing liberals attacking it, I knew something was wrong.
Mm,
So I started
right.
doing
Right.
research and I go, there it is. They don't like this. They don't want the government being less involved in schools because that means they have to give up their LGBT
Less
propaganda.
control.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what it was. And I go, okay. When you have Rachel Maddow and the rest of them talking bad about Project 2025, you know what it is. But they were so tactful at making it look like it was an agenda that was going to put us in concentration camps and all this other craziness.
Mm,
Of course, even the right conservative people in the YouTube world were like, you got to read about Project 2025. I'm like, clearly you didn't read it, moron. Because had you
right.
read it, you would not have fucking said what you just said. Sorry. You would not have said what you
Yeah.
just said. Right. And then they're like, well, but there's no but. Read it for yourself, then come out, we can have this conversation. Right.
Hmm.
So again, the left is already starting with their attack. They're already trying to make it like Trump. This is Trump's plan. It wasn't Trump's plan. It was by American Heritage or Heritage Foundation. Sorry. They came up with this roadmap. And again, it's for anyone, Democrat, Republican, Independent, the Green Party, whoever decides to come into the office. They want them to, at the very least, read it
Mm.
and then come up with their own plan based off of that roadmap.
Yeah. I mean, it has to be a give and take. I mean, we're going to get some things that we may not like within any plan.
Right.
But if it's the majority is going to benefit and help the American people, help our society, help our country, I think that's a good deal, you know.
When it comes to groups, there are too many groups here that want special interest in them instead of looking at the
Right.
bigger picture and going, we need to fix America, all of it,
Mm,
right? And not just say, well, the Chinese need a special interest in them, or the blacks, or the Jews, or the white Christian group. It needs to be America as a whole. And as soon as people understand that it's all of us as a whole and not just individual groups, we can
mm.
definitely get past a lot of the bullshit we're seeing.
Do,
But we
do
don't.
you think that's like contribute towards our less and less of our uh, kids joining the military? Is that like the backlash of the patriotism that is not there anymore, obviously, because we have these subcategory of groups, individualized, categories that
Yes,
people are geared to. Yeah.
absolutely. So again, in the military, they're focused on LGBT, right? And everything is fly the gay flag at that camp. They had a pride party on some U.S. warship, and they had
Wow.
all of the gay pride cake. And I'm like, how's that America? Like, if you're not doing this for other groups, if you're not doing this for Black groups, the Juneteenth, or the Indians, East Indians, the 7-Eleven Indians, if you're not doing it for
Right.
any of them, don't do it for anyone, and just celebrate Independence Day, and that's it. You
Right.
shouldn't be celebrating Muslim holidays or Chinese holidays. It should just be American holidays only, and that's especially if you're in the military, right?
Hmm.
That's it. If you have a problem with it, don't join the military.
Right.
Don't join the military and have your BS injected into it, right? If you're transgender, which I disagree with them serving for a lot of reasons, but just to say you're transgender, shut the hell up. Play your
Hmm.
position, do your MOS, and be fucking quiet about it. No one cares, right? If you're
Right.
gay and you like to have, gay parties, whatever it is, fine. Do that on your off time. Don't do the drag queen thing on a military base. You're about
Right.
America. You're about serving the American people. The American people don't care what color eyeliner you wear. They don't. They want to know that you're going to protect us, and they want to know that when push comes to shove, you're going to sacrifice your life.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I had friends that were in the military that I went to basic training with that were in my MOS. I didn't care if they were gay. I didn't care who they were doing what with who. As long as they had my back and they can do their
What
job
matters?
proficiently, that's all that mattered. And the other issues and the other things are personal, but we're here for one job, one country, one issue, and I think that's where people go astray, like you said, when they have all these other sub ideas of what the military is supposed to be, what government's supposed to be, what issues are supposed to be front and center.
Right.
But we're so divided. That's what is dividing us right now.
Now, 2024. If people put aside their nonsense, we put aside our BS, we start looking at what the government's doing. We start looking at the fact that they're taxing us out of house, home, and food. They are making sure we are working from paycheck to paycheck instead of putting money away. Because we are all divided in our nonsense, because we're sitting there with stupid Palestinian signs or Israeli signs, instead of coming together as Americans, looking at the government and going, you know what, fucko, you guys are going to fix this problem. They don't want that. So they keep us divided with these plants that they put in on YouTube, that they put in on Instagram and Facebook. And these people are drumming up the division even wider. But I think if we got together as people and we focused on the government, we can actually make a dent in the Civil War, not even the Civil War, rephrase that, revolution, to make sure that the government stops screwing us. Because why are we paying taxes out of the wazoo, but the politicians who run this country are paying less? We had
Right.
people throwing tea into the Boston Harbor for less, and we're being taxed on everything. Our money, our bank accounts, when you die, the food we bought, the clothing and we're being doubled and triple taxed. But
Right.
no, they want us to stay divided so that our focus is on the bullshit. Now, thankfully, I can multitask, right? I
Right.
can break balls of liberals, but understand that I shouldn't be doing this. I should be trying to get them in on our side. And the side is the middle, not the right and not the left, in the middle. we can come to an agreement, a conversation,
Mm.
we can stop a lot of bullshit, and we can stop the government from doing a lot of bullshit. But again,
Yeah.
that's my
No,
naive nonsense.
I, I think that's a good perspective to keep, you know, especially going into the end of this year because a lot of people have a divided mindset. It's not, hey, let's get together and solve these issues. I mean, I think we all want less government, less taxes, healthy food to eat, better job wages, keep inflation down. I think we have a common goal in keeping our kids educated, keeping them safe, and keeping all of our rights, not just Second Amendment, but all of our rights. I think people have more things in common than they think they do, and I think like we got into those categories, those subcategories that keeps people's minds and their energy on social media. It keeps them scattered. You know,
Yep.
like you said, it definitely seems like it's on purpose, for sure.
I listen. I when the Occupy Wall Street people were occupying Wall Street, or not Wall Street, but the area right
Right.
downtown. You were like, "What idiots!" But then when they were talking, you were like, "They have a point.
Mm-hmm.
Why is the 1% deciding everything for us?" Right? Then the Tea Party started up, and they were going after the rich, and then with that, they said racial divide. That'll separate them even more. And then they'll have like the George Floyd people protest for George Floyd. You have those that didn't like George Floyd start their bullshit. And then we had that racial divide. And that racial divide came years after both of those incidents. But nonetheless, they keep dividing us with these racial baiting situations because that's all they are, right?
Mm-hmm.
If people just looked at it and go, well, Chauvin was an asshole, that's it.
Right. Yeah.
Put him in jail, away with the key. Now, was George Floyd innocent? Absolutely not. He had his fucking his BS. When you watch that body cam of that incident, there was so much more that went down, including the fact that Chauvin's knee wasn't on his neck, nowhere
Right.
near it. But that
Right.
angle of that photo that they froze for us, so us to look at and go,
They ran with it.
right, they got
Yeah.
everybody with it. When you look at the
Yeah.
video angle from a not a passerby, but a witness, if you will, when he looked at the witness shift positions, you saw that his knee was on his back, upper back.
Right.
And
Right.
then with that, you were like, yo, he didn't do this. He didn't kill him. He wasn't on his neck. He didn't, and not for nothing. But I was an EMT for a little while. I'm not a
Mm-hmm.
moron, but I understand that applying pressure to the back of somebody's neck is not going to close their trach off, right?
Right.
There's
Right.
that as well. So still, we had two assholes meet and things went sideways, and that divided America even more, right?
Right.
Especially during COVID when people were already losing their crap because they were locked down. And those are the
Mm-hmm.
people who allowed themselves to be locked down because I didn't. I still went out
Right.
camping and did what I needed to do, right? I was
Yeah.
kicked out of a lot of places, but nonetheless, I tried. Um, but it's the division that, listen, even the Egyptians and the Romans understood, the higher ups, the higher echelons. They
Mm-hmm.
understood about division and dividing people and keeping them away from the power structure. As long as they're divided and dealing with their mess, they're not going to look at us and the nonsense we're doing. This is the elites and the rich. And that's exactly what they're doing now. So the practice, which has started and dated back to Egyptian days, is still going on today. And a lot of people don't realize that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the main thing that sticks out for me is the Roman cathedrals. You know, Gladiator 2 is about to come out, football stadiums, keeping
Yeah.
people distracted,
Yes.
throwing them bread,
Yeah.
throwing them drinks, and just the distraction takes place, and I think that's what keeps it going. You
Oh
know.
yeah, because people like the NFL. I'm like, and I said, first of all, and yes, I'm going to be that asshole. I'm going to make that comment, but you are part of the entire problem when you watch football, when you watch
Right.
basketball and baseball.
Right.
Part of the entire problem because they are brainwashing you by keeping you pacified with dudes beating each other up on a field. Meanwhile, you're spending all of this money to watch athletes who make more money than God do what they do. And I commend the athletes for what they do. I absolutely
Right.
do. But still, we're giving millions of billions to organizations
Yeah.
like the NFL who don't even pay taxes, right?
Mm,
Meanwhile, I got to pay taxes because what? Because if they got taxes out of the NFL from every state, maybe this is the naive side of me, Teflon. Maybe we would
mm,
pay less taxes here because the amount of money they generate is insane.
yeah.
But yet
Yeah.
they keep us entertained with the BS. They keep us divided with the BS. And people want to sit there and go, America needs to get back to it. Well, you know how America can get back to it? Stop going to football games. Stop going to
Mhm.
basketball games and baseball games. Stop buying from Amazon. Stop all of that shit. Let the
Yeah.
people stop going on social media, Instagram and Facebook. Stop that shit and give the power back to the people. These people will soon realize that they can't
Mhm.
walk all over us anymore, but they don't.
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
at fault with the Instagram shit. I mean, obviously, I'm trying to run a pseudo business, but
Right.
and I say pseudo because I suck at it and I'm horrible at it. I'm
But
really
there's
really bad
balance
at it.
to it. You know,
Huh?
there's balance. I said there's balance to it.
Oh, well, I'm a nightmare with it. Like people like, oh, what you got shirts you could sell, and I'm like, yeah, and then I don't give a link. Like I'm a
Right. Right.
horrible
Right.
businessman. I'm more about trying to get the message out, and
Yeah.
people are asking me about like paraphernalia and shit like that. I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, I have it, but I just suck at it. So I'm trying to get better at it, but there's so much shit going on. I don't know how I can focus on. I know how I can. I did come up with a plan, and I didn't even follow that plan, but
All
still,
right. Yeah.
all of the things that are going on, we have the power, and we are brainwashed into believing we don't.
Mhm.
And I noticed that during COVID, when that whole nonsense went down, people sat there and believed that the politicians were right, that they set the rules for us,
Mm.
and that because we put so much trust in them at that moment and at that time, that they were going to lead us through this. Now, granted, there are some times when the politicians do have to take over because people are stupid. We're inherently stupid. But if we got together and we ran certain things, we would not have had this problem.
Right.
We
Yeah.
wouldn't allow them to do the things that they did.
Yeah. It kind of it's like a snowball effect. One thing leads to another. Distractions. People get comfortable. We're very comfortable
Yes.
here in our modern day society, USA and Europe, certain parts of Europe. And so when people get comfortable, they get more lazy, take less initiative, they pay less attention. And I think we need to start getting back to that. Everything that you just said, start paying attention. Let's not give our money to crap. Let's not throw away our rights. Let's get back in the game. Let's get back to it and getting some real issues solved. And I think this election is part of that process. I think we're in a time like never before. I think the way we see democracy may change this year. So that's on the because line. You're still in the city. Um, what has been the hardest thing for you living in the city and being prepared, for events, major disasters, emergencies?
Um, Space is a problem for a lot of people. For me right now, not so much, but space is the number one problem. Where to put your
Mm-hmm.
items, where to put your food, where to put your water if you can store it, right? This apartment is pretty big, so I could store away some good amount of food. But for the
Yeah.
average person who lives in an average size apartment, it's always a nightmare to put away stuff. And how much of it do you need? And that's always a question. Well, what do I start with? I say go
Mm-hmm.
for a month out of the gates, right? Try not to, like if you don't have money, go a week at a time. But if you have some money that you can sacrifice, go a month at a time. In a month, it's really easy. But if you're straining and you're holding on, you're counting your pennies, I would say a week at a time every time you go shopping. And then you set aside that food for the week for your closet or wherever you're going to put it on, a shelf system, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Water is another big problem because again, the city, we are reliant on a system that if it does crash, no water for us. Now, yes, so there are places you can get water from, absolutely, but you don't want to do that for the long term. You don't want to start drinking out the back of your toilet or standpipe water. You don't want to do all that shit. So you have to
Yeah.
come up with a plan. and that's the hardest problem for us. Now, water catchment system is great, but when you're in a city like New York, you're at
Mhm.
the will of the weather, you know.
Right. Yeah.
And like if you can go, we can go 2, 3 weeks without rain, and in that
Mhm.
amount of time, you can go through a serious amount of water, right? So you have to come up with a backup plan, and one of the backup plans is getting out of the city. Not a backup plan. That should be your first plan. Your backup plan
Right.
should be staying if you have to, but your
Right.
first plan should be getting out of the city, especially if you don't have access to fresh water.
Right. Right. Yeah. What what always comes to mind is I Am Legend, where they took out the bridges,
Yes,
and I always wondered how I would get out of the city if that ever happened, or would I stay? That's always a thought in my mind in these major
well,
cities that have bridges.
right. Well, I mean, the I Am Legend, the story, switched around to Robert Neville being in New York City. Because if I'm not mistaken, I don't think he was in New York City that I can remember. But when he's in his house, Will Smith's character, Robert Neville's Will
Right.
Smith, is in his house, and you see his setup, you're like, yo, that's the shit.
Yeah.
That is
Yeah.
awesome setup, right? The
Right.
whole water system and the tank, and I'm pretty sure he had a catch
Mm-hmm.
system on the roof that I wish they would have showed.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that was even his problem. Even he still had problems with. They created the perfect scenario for him,
Mm-hmm.
which was a little, unrealistic when you start thinking about it. But still,
Right.
that's what a lot of us wanted to live in, that exact house.
Right.
But his problem still was, how does he get off the city? Now, how do you get off Manhattan? Easy. You get a raft. You get a
Yeah.
boat. I mean, he had all of those boats at Boat Basin at his disposal, or any of the
It's true.
marinas. He got on it, hot wired it, and went across, right?
Yeah.
Or played it safe. Played it safe. Obviously, you go during the day, you get on the boat, you travel as far as you can at night, right? And then you wait to dock at whatever it was, because those things couldn't swim. At least I don't think they could.
Right.
And then you dock and then you move from there, but you got to be
Mm-hmm.
fast, right?
Yeah.
And he could have done this over the 3 years that he was there, taken a
Mm-hmm.
boat, hot wired a car, put fresh fuel in it, left it ready to rock and roll. Went back home,
Mm-hmm.
started setting stuff up to make sure that he could move further and further up the river. Again, that would have taken you time. But staying is, unless you have a good amount of firepower, staying is
Mm-hmm.
not an option,
Right.
because you are ultimately going to be fighting someone. You have to
Yeah.
be,
Yeah.
you know.
Right. Right.
I'm surprised that in I Am Legend that he was the only one on the island. There had to be other
Yeah.
people. There's no way that he
Yeah.
could have been the only one, right? I mean,
Right.
people adapt fast to trauma and bad
Mm-hmm.
situations. That was a bad situation, you
Yeah.
know.
It
So
especially like if you're dealing with safety precautions and then having threats, of course, New York is not, the favorite city for Second Amendment.
yeah.
What are people's alternatives to that?
So leaving aside the Robin Neville scenario and just being
Yeah.
humans involved, um, New York City has now changed their laws to own firearms. So you
Mm-hmm.
can definitely go and get yourself your permits. Do that.
Okay.
Alternative are bats and knives, and bats and knives, you have to know how to use them, right?
Right.
Just because you have a baseball bat doesn't mean you know how to swing it. Just because you have a
Mm-hmm.
knife doesn't mean you know how to use it. You have to learn how to use those things. You have to learn how to use pepper spray, mace, whatever it is. Those pepper ball things that come in the
Yeah.
firearms now,
Yeah.
firearms, right? You could definitely use that. But unfortunately, and what I'm about to say is probably over the top, you do not want to incapacitate. Well, you don't want to just disable your assailant. If you are in a grid down, all bets are off scenario, you got to
Right.
permanently disable that assailant, because this isn't the movies. You're not
Right.
gonna let him go and be like, "I hope you learned your lesson," and then turn to the camera and go, "No one's half the battle." No, you have to permanently disable that person so they do not come back. Right? You
Mm-hmm.
have to make examples. Now, obviously, if somebody's starving and they're like, and it's like a single mother or something like that, yeah, let them go. But if it's
Right.
a group of dudes, don't even take that chance. The
Yeah.
longer I start preparing, the more I start seeing the savagery in people, when people are hungry and
Mm,
desperate, they will go a million miles outside of their cells to get what they need. And the
mhm,
only way to deal with that is permanently putting them down so that they never come back. It's the only
right.
way.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the safety precautions between the city and country or suburbs, I mean, it's totally different because you're in a close quarters area, lots of corners, lots of hiding spots,
Right.
a lot more people, of course. Um, yeah, it's gonna be very, very hard to navigate that when something first pops off. Now, if you're in the house, if you're doing something, where you're secluded and you're not going anywhere for a while, you just have to hold it down. I mean, you could probably make it, but if you're going out right away, it's like, you're gonna take that chance.
Oh, listen, in the city, there are a lot of places you can't hide. There are a lot, the gangs or whoever might be staying behind, this is too
Hmm.
much ground to cover. It's just too
Hmm.
much ground. And so people think that you're toast. No, if you have everything you need, you can survive in the city. But you got to be and there's certain areas where you would have to move to where you would do
Right.
good. Like an area like this, probably not so much. But in a building like this, yeah, I
Hmm.
have fortified doors. For them to get in here would take them with conventional weapons,
Yeah.
tools, probably about a week if they don't know what they're doing. If they have
Right.
like blowtorches and things like that, yeah, obviously a couple of minutes. But there's certain doors here that you can lean on the wrong way and they'll pop open as well. So it all
Mm.
depends. I mean, they're good and bad. Again, a lot of blocks, there are a lot of secluded blocks here too where you can hide and no one's going to know you're there. They're
Right.
going to be
Right.
sticking to the main avenues and the main buildings and the taller buildings and looking at. And even then, they got to do a grid search of that building, which most people don't know how to do.
Hmm.
So you are playing on people's stupidity and not stupidity, sorry, lack of knowledge and not learning how to do things and go over
Right.
city. Like Robert Neville, he had a grid system. When you looked at
Yeah.
the map, you saw that he had his system checked out and he was doing this block for a week or two and that block for a week or two. And he
Hmm.
went about it that way. Most criminals are not going to think in that nature. So they're probably going to
Yeah.
skip over you, especially if they can't get into your door.
Right.
Weakened people are not going to try to force a door open and waste all that energy. They're just not,
Mm.
you know.
Yeah, it's
Uh,
true.
if they are fed and squared away, that's a different story.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think that comes down to, transportation. If people are walking or they have a bike, what would be the best transportation? I mean, if you're walking, do you carry your gear with you? Is it something you have a go bag? Is there, just a scout pack you carry, if you're staying in the area?
Well, Scout Pack, I still have one. I pack it when I do weekends out in the woods, right? Which I haven't done in a year. But I would
Okay.
pack a Scout Pack and it would be like 3 days worth of stuff. And I would go out in the woods and just live out of that, right? And that can be
Okay.
done. And I would have a haversack rolled up and attached to it so that I can
Mm.
stuff things in it. Normally like fire starting material would go in there, but you can use a haversack to stuff other things in it as well. You're in a city and you're too far from home and you can't get back. Yes, you would use a Scout Pack.
Right.
Um, Again, I go back to Robert Neville's situation, but he would always try to make it back for home because he had a vehicle to do so. Well, if
Right.
I thought, well, what if he was on foot and he was scouting around? How would he get back to the apartment? You would have to hole up somewhere and just pray that they didn't know you were there, you know?
Right.
And the
Right.
way the Dark Seekers were in the movie, it led me to believe that they weren't all over the island like that.
Right.
And they rolled in packs like that
Hmm.
one pack that he took out, there was
Yeah.
probably 20 other packs throughout the entire city, you know.
Right. Yeah.
But when you're dealing with people in that aspect, you could definitely pull up in somebody else's apartment. The chances of them finding you, it's like, nil. So you can definitely get away with pulling that kind of scouting off, especially if you're not looking to get off the island. Because the problem,
Right.
the other side of this, if the island's abandoned, and I know that I have to contend with a few people, I would probably stay here and take my chances, knowing what I know about the city.
Right.
Once you leave the city and you take that raft across the river, and now
Right.
you're in unknown territory, you don't know what to expect. And most people will stick to what they know, especially in a
Right.
disaster situation.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's true. Stick to what you know. I mean, especially if there's like an EMP or something, when all communications are down, there's no way to communicate, there's nowhere to go, power's out, everything changes at that point. Um,
Yes.
Speaking of EMPs, I know, that there was a conversation with China, building some type of device. They probably already have them, but using it against their let's just say US, because that's their prime focus, but using it on us. What do you think the first area people should start preparing for when it comes to lights, blackout, power going out for a month, 2 months, 3 months,
Again, if you live in a city, you got to bounce. If you don't have the firepower to protect yourself, you're toast. Look what's going on now, right? We have law and order, supposedly law and order. Look at the migrants or the illegal immigrants that are here wreaking havoc. The uptick in men on dirt bikes robbing people while law and order in place. If you do not have the firepower, you have to leave. You're not going to sit here and the power goes out with an EMP for a couple of months, all hell's going to break loose. I mean, the cops will probably stick it out as long as they can. Firemen will stick it out as long as they can. But a couple of months of no power,
Yeah.
you're not gonna last. I mean,
Right.
yes, you could. Sorry, if you stay in your home and you have everything you need, you could last.
Hmm.
You have to venture out and get food and water because now the National Guards are giving out food and water, and now you get on that line, and some dude is looking at you guys and going, "All right, those two." Then they walk away from the line with their food and water and bringing it back to their family, all happy and shit, and then they get robbed. Right?
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
criminals here are doing too much these days,
Hmm.
way too much. And in a scenario like that, where all right, power's going to come back on, but it's going to be a month or two, you got to leave.
Yeah.
You can't stay.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
again, some of us can stay, and some of us can't. Some of
Right.
us can figure it out, and some of us are smart enough to know how to move through the city. But if
Hmm.
you're not smart enough, or you don't have the firepower, or whatever it is, leave.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, do you think it's better for people to develop a plan as a group or as single individuals, within the city, and then come together, or how would you work that out?
You would have to come together as a group. The group
Right.
thing is going to work for you a lot better than single. Like again, if you know what you're doing, you can definitely hang out on your own.
Right.
Trying to come up with a group plan, you should have a group plan already written and drawn up, right? Like I used to have one for the building I lived in before I moved here. I had a group
Okay.
plan of who I was going to contact, who was going to be on board on this plan. They didn't even know it, but I had the plan drawn out.
Okay.
In case something went down, my neighbors next to me down the hall, one floor above, one floor below, were going to be the immediate contacts, right? And then we had other people through the building that I could sort of trust.
Right.
And that was going to be the people involved in getting food security and things squared away. The lone wolf thing can work again if you know what you're doing. But if you don't, you got to do it in a group. And then you got to fortify the building. The building being fortified is the utmost important. Make sure all the exits are fortified. Make sure all the entrances are fortified. Make sure your fire escape can't even be accessed to criminals. That probably means removing the escape ladder, which you can. You can unhook
Hmm.
it off the what you call and drop, and it's a drop ladder. Sorry,
Right.
removing that, and then you have to have 24-hour security. That's the only way that works. You can't have everybody go to bed at midnight thinking no one's going to come in. 24-hour security, guys on the rooftop,
Hmm.
guys in the rear of the alleyway. You have to make sure, and guys in the lobby, making sure people are not coming in and out, and making sure only the people you know are coming in and out. And even then, after a certain time of night, no one leaves the building. And that's just for
Yeah.
safety and security reasons.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that's jam packed with information. I'm about to rewind that and go step by
Sorry.
step. But that's good stuff, no man. I think that's our time. I mean,
All
that's a
right.
good place to end this. But yeah, tell the people where they can find you: Instagram, YouTube.
You can find me on Instagram, YouTube as The Angry Prepper. I'm also on Facebook, but I'm trying to be more active on there. But yeah, just look up The Angry Prepper and I should pop up on YouTube and Instagram.
Yeah, man. I appreciate you coming on. Preparedness Talk and taking the time out to talk with us. And yeah, this was good. We got to do this again for sure.
Oh man, thank you.
Yeah, man. So you guys heard him, the Angry Pepper. Go to his YouTube page, like and subscribe. Go to his Instagram. Make sure you follow him. Show him support. Leave your comments. Tell us what you thought about our talk today. Make sure you leave some comments on our YouTube. What is something you learned that was new? But yeah, man, that's our time. Thank you for coming. It's Preparedness Talk.